Shanti. We will begin today's session with a short guided meditation. So I request everyone to sit down in a comfortable position on a chair or on the floor as per convenience. Let me bring my attention to the present moment. The present moment is all there is. Let me inhale and exhale. Breathe in, breathe out. Let me feel the air gushing and out of my body. Let my mind and body relax. I am a happy soul. I am content with what I have in the present moment. I need nothing from the external world. All that I have been searching for has always been within me. I accept each scene for what it is. Scenes may go my way, may not go my way. I remain a detached observer. I influence the scene with my elevated vibrations. I am a special and beloved child of God. He is my constant companion in all scenes of life. With him by my side, I am always victorious. Om Shanti. ओम शांति. कैसे हैं आप सभी आज? How is everyone doing today? Okay. Good to know that all of you are doing very well. So we will start with a new chapter today, chapter 3. So before we begin chapter 3, I want to ask one question to all of you. Why do you think it is important to learn about the mind? In this book, The Power of Now, we are focusing a lot about the functioning of the mind, what the mind is. So, why do you think it is important for us to know about the mind? What are your views on it? You can write your answers in the chat box and I can read them out. To save and improve relationships, yes. It helps in becoming the master over the mind, right? If we know how the mind works, then yes, we can control it better. Be free from suffering and pain. Very true. Anybody else want to share their views? To achieve our goals and purpose in life, right? We have to know about mind to control it. Yes, correct. Mind is very important for our mental health. Absolutely. To live in happiness, yes, because we have been victim of mind since Dwapar Yuga, and now is the time we're awakened by God itself. So the need of the hour is to be victorious over the mind, right? Nowadays, overthinking, yes. So in today's age, the main disease is that of overthinking. So we need to understand the basic functioning of the mind so that we can free ourselves from all of this. Okay. How to handle the mind, right? Okay, so let me share the screen and we have one more answer because mind is a very important machinery of human being. So know its weakness and strongest point. We can learn how to control and use mind. Mind is a very powerful instrument of soul. Without this, soul cannot do to win in every situation. Without knowing how to use it, we can't win. Yeah, so mind is what creates thoughts, right? And each and everything that we do in this life is based on a decision. So the thoughts are generated by the mind. So understanding the mind is definitely important. Okay, so now we will start with today's chapter. Let me share the screen. Can everyone see the screen? Okay. Okay. So, chapter 3, the main heading of the chapter is moving deeply into the now. So, the first subtopic is don't seek yourself in the mind. The seeker is asking the author, I feel that there is a great deal I feel that there is still a great deal I need to learn about the workings of my mind before I can get anywhere near full consciousness or spiritual enlightenment. So the author replies to this, no, you don't. The problems of the mind cannot be solved on the level of the mind. Once you have understood the basic dysfunction, there isn't really much else that you need to learn or understand. Studying the complexities of the mind may make you a good psychologist, but doing so won't take you beyond the mind, just as the study of madness isn't enough to create sanity. You have already understood the basic mechanics of the unconscious state, identification with the mind, which creates a false self, the ego, as a substitute for your true self rooted in nature. You become as a branch cut off from the vine, as Jesus puts it. So the author is telling that we do not need to go into a deep study of the mind to understand about it. So he's telling that we need to just become aware about the basic dysfunction of the mind, right? And what is that basic dysfunction? The mind is identified with a false image, the ego, and it is acting on the basis of that. So that is the basic dysfunction, right? So we need to be aware of that, but we need not go in depth about the various complexities of the mind. A psychologist might do that for their profession, but we do not need to take that step in order to start our healing process. Knowing and realizing the basic dysfunction of the mind is more than enough. The ego's needs are endless. So, yesterday we learned about the characteristics of the ego, and it was, what did we learn? We learned that it is insecure, it feels very vulnerable, it lives in a constant fear, right? So today we get to learn another point about the ego, which is the ego's needs are endless, feels vulnerable and threatened, and so lives in a state of fear and want. Once you know how the basic dysfunction operates, there is no need to explore all its countless manifestations, no need to make it into a complex personal problem. The ego, of course, loves that. It is always seeking for something to attach itself to in order to uphold and strengthen its illusory sense of self, and it will readily attach itself to your problem. So, the ego also loves attention. That is why it tries to attach itself to something from the external world, external world to get that attention. This is why, for so many people, a large part of their sense of self is intimately connected with their problems. Once this has happened, the last thing they want is to become free of them. That would mean loss of self. There can be a great deal of unconscious ego investment in pain and suffering. So many people, if you see, if you talk to some people, they will only be talking about their problems, right? So it is not that nobody in this world makes a conscious choice of being an embodiment of problems. Nobody aims for that. Everybody wants to be happy in life. But what happens is that they are so deeply identified with their mind, and the mind is so heavily connected with the ego that they live with their problems. They have made an identity of themselves out of that problem. And as we have read earlier in the book, pain feeds pain, right? So they use the problem to uh, keep the pain going. So once you recognize the root of unconsciousness as identification with the mind, which of course includes the emotions, you step out of it. So what you have to do, you just need to realize that when you're feeling this way, you're actually being unconscious. What happens is that when we feel, can you hear my voice?
Yes, Didi.
Okay. So when you realize that what happens when we have negative thinking or wasteful thinking, in such times we usually don't realize that we are being identified of with the. So that is the time the ego like operates through us. The false image lives through us. The pain body lives through us. But once we realize it, then we can break free of it. You become present. When you are present, you can allow the mind to be as it is without getting entangled in it. The mind in itself is not dysfunctional, it is a wonderful tool. Dysfunction sets in when you seek yourself in it and mistake it for who you are. It then becomes the egoic mind and takes over your whole life. So the mind is a wonderful tool, but if we don't understand it, if we don't know how to use it, or if we try to build an identity of ourselves on the basis of the mind, then it becomes an egoic mind and it takes over our whole life. End the delusion of time. The seeker is asking the author, it seems almost impossible to disidentify from the mind. We are all immersed in it. How do you teach a fish to fly? Here is the key. End the delusion of time. Time and mind are inseparable. Remove time from the mind and it stops unless you choose to use it. So, what is the delusion of time? So, mind and time are inseparable. That means the mind lives either in the past or it lives in the future. It never lives in the present moment, which is why the author is telling that time and mind are inseparable. To be identified with your mind is to be trapped in time. The compulsion to live almost exclusively through memory and anticipation. This creates an endless preoccupation with past and future and an unwillingness to honor and acknowledge the present moment and allow it to be. So, when we are so caught up in the past or future, we are judging every scene of our life through that lens. And as a result, we don't allow the present moment to be what it is. We become resistant to the present moment. The compulsion arises because the past gives you an identity and the future holds the promise of salvation, of fulfillment in whatever form. Both are illusions. So, what we usually do, we tell that the past, we rely on the past to have an identity of ourselves. And in the future, we always tell that I'll be happy when this happens, I'll be happy when that happens. So we always think that happiness is something that lies in the future, but the author says that both are illusions. But without a sense of time, how could we function in this world? There would be no goals to strive toward anymore. I wouldn't even know who I am because my past makes me who I am today. I think time is something very precious and we need to learn to use it wisely rather than waste it. Time isn't precious at all because it is an illusion. What you perceive as precious is not time, but the one point that is out of time, the now. So the author had previously cited that if you ask an oak tree, if you ask an eagle about time, they will not have a clue about what you are talking about. They will say, "What time is it?" If you ask them, they will say, "It is, of course, now." So now is what is real. But according to the human mind, we have become heavily dependent on time. The more you're focused on time, past and future, the more you miss the now, the most precious. Why is it the most precious thing? So now the author is clarifying why time is the most precious thing. Firstly, because it is the only thing. It is all there is. The eternal present is the space within which your whole life unfolds, the one factor that remains constant. Life is now. So, life is never in the past, it's never in the future, it is always in the present moment. You can take a decision in the present moment. You cannot go back to the past and change your decisions or take a decision. You cannot go to the future. Future is imaginary, it does not exist. And how can you deal with something which does not exist? So, what you have is now. What you have is this moment. There was never a time when your life was not now, nor will ever be. Secondly, the now is the only point that can take you beyond the limited confines of the mind. It is your only point of access into the timeless and formless realm of being. So why he is telling that now is the only point that you take that can take you beyond the limited confines of the mind? Because in this moment you have the power to choose. You have the power to choose to live a different life, to change the patterns, the old patterns that we have been living with. So that decision you can take only in the present moment. Nothing exists outside the now. Aren't past and future just as real, sometimes even more real than the present. After all, the past determines who we are as well as how we perceive and behave in the present. And our future goals determine which actions we take in the present. You haven't yet grasped the essence of what I am saying because you are trying to understand it mentally. The mind cannot understand it, only you can. Please just listen. So, what does he mean by only you can? Only you can. You can means you, the soul, can. Your mind cannot because the mind is identified with a false image. So, it can never understand it. But you, the soul, who is an eternal being, you can understand about this aspect. Have you experienced, done, thought, or felt anything outside the now? Do you think you ever will? Is it possible for anything to happen or be outside the now? The answer is obvious, is it not? So, whatever we have lived in our life, that moments, they have all occurred in the present. The present has become past, but once upon a time it was still a present. Nothing ever happened in the past, happened in the now. Nothing will ever happen in the future. It will happen in the now. So the past is a gone by now, and the future is an upcoming now. What you think of as the past is a memory trace stored in the mind of a former now. When you remember the past, you reactivate a memory trace and you do so now. The future is an imagined now, a projection of the mind. When the future comes, it comes as the now. When you think about the future, you do it now. Past and future obviously have no reality of their own. Just as the moon has no light of its own, but can only reflect the light of the sun, so are past and future only pale reflections of the light, power, and reality of the eternal present. Their reality is borrowed from the now. So it means that past and future they have no reality. So he's comparing that to help us understand this. He's taking the example of the moon. The moon does not have any light of its own. It shines with the light of the sun. So the same way, the past and future, they don't have any identity of themselves. They borrow the light from the now and hence exist. The essence of what I am saying here cannot be understood by the mind. The moment you grasp it, there is a shift in consciousness from mind to being, from time to presence. Suddenly, everything feels alive, radiates energy, emanates being. Okay, so when the essence of what I am saying here cannot be understood with the mind cannot understand it. The moment you grasp it, when you understand it, you, the soul, understand it, there is a shift in consciousness from the mind to the being, and you are in the present moment. And that is when you feel alive and you can feel the power of your true self. Okay. The key to the spiritual dimension. So this is page number 52. So we covered till 51, but since we still have time, we can continue a bit. Will that be okay for everyone? Okay, thank you. Okay, the key to the spiritual dimension. In life-threatening emergency situations, the shift in consciousness from time to presence sometimes happens naturally. The personality that has a past and a future momentarily recedes and is replaced by an intense conscious presence, very still but very alert at the same time. Whatever response is needed then arises out of the state of consciousness. So, what happens in life threatening situations? We have a phrase which is presence of mind. When a crisis arises and someone handles it so well, we say this person has a very good presence of mind, which means what happens in such scenarios is the person in that time it they detach themselves from the past and the future, and they bring their mind in the present moment, and they take a decision, like the author says, that the response, whatever response is needed, it comes out, it arises from the state of consciousness, right? And they are able to take a decision. The reason why some people love to engage in dangerous activities such as mountain climbing, car racing, and so on, although they may not be aware of it, is that it forces them into the now, that intensely alive state that is free of time, free of problems, free of thinking, free of the burden of the personality. So many people try to do very adventurous kind of activities because it enables them to be in the present moment, right? But then it is not a natural way of feeling. What is happening? They're relying on something, they're putting their life in risk as well to be in the present moment. But you, as a soul, if you only realize that you have the power, if you only realize that you can detach yourself from this conditioning of the mind, then you can feel it naturally. You don't need to resort to dangerous activities to feel that. Slipping away from the present moment, even for a second, may mean death. Unfortunately, they come to depend on a particular activity to be in that state. But you don't need to climb the north face of the Eiger. You can enter the state now. So that is what the author is telling, that we can do so in a natural way. We don't need to rely on a dangerous activity for that. Since ancient times, spiritual masters of all traditions have pointed to the now as the key to the spiritual dimension. Despite this, it seems to have remained a secret. So all spiritual practices from one way or the other have always pointed to the importance of now, but then it has remained like it has, but nobody has been able to get clarity on that. It is certainly not taught in churches and temples. If you go to a church, you may hear readings from the Gospels, such as, "Take no thought for the morrow shall thought for the things of itself." Or, "Nobody who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of the." So, in the Gospels and all the religious scriptures, there has been a reference about the now, right? But there hasn't been any clarity on how to be in the present moment. That has not been taught. Or you might hear the passage about the beautiful flowers that are not anxious about tomorrow, but live with ease in the timeless now and are provided for abundantly by God. The depth and radical nature of these teachings are not recognized. No one seems to realize that they're meant to be lived and so bring about a profound inner transformation. We have also read poems on living in the present moment, but then we have appreciated those contents, but we didn't realize that they need to be brought in practical life as well, which is why that inner transformation, which should have happened, did not happen. The whole essence of Zen consists in walking along the razor's edge of now, to be so utterly, so completely present that no problem, no suffering, nothing that is not who you are in your essence can survive in you. So, uh, the author is telling the essence of Zen is to focus completely in the present moment in such a way that anything which is not you cannot survive. In the now, in the absence of time, all your problems dissolve. Suffering needs time. It cannot survive in the now. Because in the now, you are free. And when you start experimenting with it, you will see it gives a feeling of joy. It makes you feel very light. The first time when you experience yourself separate from your mind, the separate from your thoughts, when you begin to feel your inner self, that moment truly is something that makes you feel great. And I think we all should take that moment, do that experiment with ourselves, and feel our true self. The great Zen master Rinzai, in order to take his students' attention away from time, would often raise his finger and slowly ask, "What at this moment is lacking?" A powerful question that does not require an answer on the level of the mind. It is designed to take your attention deeply into the now. A similar question in the Zen tradition is, if not now, when? So the question is, what at this moment is lacking? So you might say that I have many problems in my life. I have this issue, I have that issue. But if you ask yourself this question, what at this moment is lacking, then can you say that you have any problem? Because in this moment, everything is perfect, right? Something might have happened in the past, but that incident is not happening now. This moment, this second is perfect. Another question in the Zen tradition is, if not now, when? So many say that never live any work for tomorrow. Do it today. Do it now. Right? So now is when you have to do everything. The now is also central to the teaching of Sufism, the mystical branch of Islam. Sufis have a saying, the Sufi is the son of time present. And Rumi, the great poet and teacher of Sufism, declares, past and future, veil God from our side, burn up both of them in fire. So, as per Rumi, the past and future does not allow us to connect with God. So, we need to burn them, means we need to detach ourselves completely from them. Meister Eckhart, the 13th century spiritual teacher, summed it all up beautifully. Time is what keeps the light from reaching us. There is no greater obstacle to God than time. So he also focused on the same point, that time is what keeps us away from God. And why do they say that it keeps us away from God? Because in the present moment we can feel our true self. And when we feel ourselves as the soul, then we can experience God, who is the supreme soul. But if we are tied up in the past and the future, then we will not be able to establish that connection with Him. And soul conscious means being in the present moment. Okay, so we will keep today till here. Tomorrow we will start with accessing the power of the now. So, any of you want to share about today's lesson? Any point of the book that you like you want to share? You can raise your hand and I can unmute you, and then we can discuss some questions on this portion. Oh, I'll unmute.
Am I audible?
Rajiv brother, you can. Yeah, you are audible.
Om Shanti and Om Shanti to all.
Om.
Actually, this lesson speaks that we always wonder in either in past or in future. We should try to keep us uh, at that moment what what is going on uh, because what we are now it depends what we have done in past and what and present what are we doing now it depends the future. So we should always concern about the now and be aware what we are doing. We should be aware about it and
Correct.
we should do it with a conscious mind. And we really miss sometimes. Uh, okay.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Uh, you have definitely raised a valid point. Yes. Thank you for sharing your views. Anybody else wants to share their views on today's lesson? So, do you think whatever you're learning is being helpful? What you learned today, you think you want to apply that in personal life? You want to experiment with that? Okay. So, we have the questions in the chat box. So, the first question is, according to the author, the study of madness isn't enough to create sanity. What is he suggesting by this? So, anybody who wants to share what you think the author tries to mean by this line? The study of madness isn't enough to create sanity. So, you can share whatever views you want to. It is not about being right or wrong. We all are learning together. So, it is a safe space to share your views. So, please feel free to share anything. It's okay. The question also has a sub part. Okay, Anika, sister, I'll unmute her.
Om Shanti. Am I audible?
Om Shanti. Yeah,
So basically, the author is suggesting that we don't need to go in a deep study of our mind. We don't need to study its complexities. We just need to understand the basic dysfunction. So basically, we've already understood that about the identification that we have with our mind, which creates this us false ego, which the ego is basically a substitute of our true self. So we don't need to explore its countless manifestations. That's what the author is saying. We don't need to try to understand why do we get these base thoughts. And basically, what we need to do is just stay in the present so that we can allow the mind to be as it is and just let the thoughts and whatever goes on in our mind just pass and not try to uh, get a deep understanding of why is it that we think like that or we get all these thoughts. Just let it be and just let it pass. That's what I think the author is saying. We don't need to be psychologists. We just have to uh, understand that it's just the false ego that's in our mind.
right, right. Thank you, sister, for sharing your views. Okay, I'll
Thank you.
unmute Indu sister. Thank you.
Om Shanti.
Om
Hello.
Shanti. Yeah,
हाँ
please share your. Yeah, we can hear you, sister.
जैसे ही है कि हमें प्रेजेंट में रहना है, हमें माइंड के फंक्शनिंग को ज्यादा समझने की जरूरत नहीं है। उसका बेसिक फंक्शन क्या है, बस हम वो समझ लें। तो माइंड का बेसिक फंक्शन क्या है? माइंड क्या है? थिंकर है, और हम क्या है? ऑब्जर्वर हैं। और इसकी डीपली जाने की जरूरत इसलिए भी नहीं है क्योंकि ये हमारे लिए इतना रेलिवेंट नहीं है। ये जिस जो इस पर्टिकुलर फील्ड का एक्सपर्ट है उसी के लिए जानना जरूरी है। हमारे लिए इतना बस बेसिक फंक्शन ही जानना जरूरी है। जैसे कि हम अगर गाड़ी चला रहे हैं तो ये गाड़ी कैसे बनी है, किस तरह से बनी, इसके पार्ट्स अंदर से कैसे हैं, ये कैसे, वो जानने की जरूरत नहीं है। हमें सिर्फ ड्राइव करना है, ठीक है, कैसे ड्राइव करते हैं इतना ही काफी है।
Right, very true, sister. And if we think more deeply about the complications of the mind or the problems, then we will be pulled in the other direction. But our aim is to recover from it, is to get out of it, right? So we need to focus on the solution. You put it really well. Thank you, sister. Now the next question is, what have you understood about the importance of time in our lives? Do you agree with the author that describing time is an illusion? So, like the author said, living in the past and the future is something that we all have done, right? So, do you agree with what the author is telling? I'll unmute Neethi's sister.
Om Shanti, sister.
Om
Om
Shanti.
Shanti.
Om
Yes,
Shanti.
yes, I totally agree with the author that the time is an illusion. As per the author, the past give you the identification and the future hold the promise of salvation and fulfillment, all this. But the time is very precious and we need to learn how to use it. As per I understood in this book, what your perceived as a precious is not time, but the one life is in now only. That's it.
Right, right. Thank you, sister, for
Thank
sharing your. Yes. Okay, so we have the third question, which is why, according to the author, do some people love to engage in dangerous activities? What do you feel about this? Anyone can let us know. We even see, people they drive bikes at such a high speed on the road, right? So the author had used the example of people climbing the mountain, dangerous mountaineering activities. But then we see all these things from day to day life. So what do you think about this question? You can share your views. If you want, you can also type in the chat box. Yeah. So Rajiv brother is telling they do so for keeping them in the present, which is true, definitely. And in that moment, they are not overthinking. Usually, they have a very overthinking mind and they don't know how to get out of it naturally, right? So they need to resort on this kind of activities to feel that way. But then we can also feel it in a very natural way, like the author has told us. Anybody else? Anybody who wants to answer this question can raise their hands. Okay. Hindu sister, I will unmute you.
हाँ, हम इसलिए जो है डेंजरस एक्टिविटीज में इन्वॉल्व होते हैं क्योंकि उस टाइम हम प्रेजेंट में रहते हैं, पूरा ध्यान उसी चीज पे देना होता है। तो उससे हम ना तो पास्ट के बारे में सोच सकते हैं उस टाइम, ना ही फ्यूचर के बारे में। पास्ट के बारे में नहीं सोचते तो पास्ट से रिलेटेड जो पेन्स हैं वो हम फील नहीं कर सकते, या फ्यूचर के बारे में जो हमें कुछ वरी होती है उस टाइम उससे भी हम डिटैच होते हैं। तो पूरा ध्यान वही देना होता है, तो उस टाइम स्टिलनेस होती है। पास्ट और फ्यूचर से हम बिल्कुल ही डिटैच होते हैं।
बिल्कुल, बिल्कुल. Definitely, you have put it very beautifully. Thank you, sister. Okay. Anybody else wants to share anything? You can raise your hand. Else, we will end today's session. We will play music, and I'll request everyone to sit in silence and to observe your mind. Be the observer, like be the watcher to the thinker. We can do that exercise with a short, with the meditation music. Okay, I'll unmute Sashi's sister.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to tell that learning about this power of now, the mind is like a instrument that which plays a very important in day-to-day activities, and presence and time. We are talking about that time in being in present. The time means when it suddenly takes it to our means past and future. We don't understand that. Okay, so being a observer, we have to keep reminding our mind that you are soul is an observer and the mind is a thinker. So we have to bring our mind from past and future to the present. That no, today is the day, and I have to enjoy this day by being in the present. So keep on repetition by telling this to the mind. uh, if we be in the present, then we feel the enjoyment of day to day activities in each and everything. Okay,
Yeah.
so by this I'm understood that only.
Okay. Okay. No, thank you so much, sister, for sharing your views. Okay. So, if nobody wants to share, then I'll request Srishti sister from our team to play the music. What we can do is we need to sit in silence, right? And we need to become the watcher to our thinker. We need to observe the thoughts that our mind is creating by being a detached observer, right? So, sister, if you can start playing the music. Thank you for today's session. We'll meet tomorrow.